stuff. So I am so excited to have our special guest here today, Jonti. And how do you pronounce your last name? I don't want to butcher it.
So,
Searll. Okay. He is joining. Thank you for your patience, everyone. We are going from one continent to the other to be here today together. Isn't technology amazing that we can
it is
actually
fabulous.
do this? So I would love if we start with just what inspired you to say, yes, I want to come and speak on the pleasure revolution?
Well, you and I have known each other a little while, and we've had a couple of conversations. And for me, this is really important. This work, this journey, the sharing is really important. And every opportunity is really important to share. And I'm very grateful for that to you. So I thank you for that. Um, and I think pleasure itself is a revolution, in our world and the way that our world is. Pleasure is revolutionary, especially with the world at the moment. And when we add consciousness to that, it really is a revolutionary experience. And that's how we change things in ourselves and change things in our world.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think, like you said, we need it more than ever right now, just especially since COVID and all the stuff on the planet that's happening. So, what I would love to do is introduce you, and then we're going to dive into some questions here, um, especially around conscious sexuality. I have to say that I don't remember how many years ago I had the pleasure of meeting you online, Jonti, and I was deeply moved. That's going to make me cry right now. So moved by your writing and your capacity to bring consciousness and bring compassion. And so many times your words that you wrote about intimacy, about touch, about sexuality, some of it we're going to dive into here, is it just, I felt like you understood me. Like it's like, somebody got me. Somebody put in words what I couldn't put into words sometimes. And I just like cracked my heart wide open. So I hope that today you also share one of your beautiful passages. I mean, I've read so many of them. That was one of the sad things when Facebook shut down my account, was not being able to see your writings and your offerings on Facebook. However, I'm really grateful that the universe brought us together because I only remembered your first name. And so, what's the likelihood when I say to somebody, oh, they tell me they're from South Africa. So Leonard was the speaker who I met on another platform. And usually when you say, hey, like, I'm from South Africa, do you know so and so, this person too, or I'm from Canada, people laugh, like, what's the likelihood? But he knew you because he's also speaks in the area of sacred sexuality and Tantra. So I was so delighted when he said, oh, yes, I know Jonti. And then he gave me your WhatsApp number, and here we are today. So grateful to Leonard for making that reconnection for me here. So I'd love to introduce you formally. So Jonti is a conscious sexuality and tantra facilitator with 30 years of experience, and very generous with your 30 years of experience. We've had some beautiful conversations. He offers journeys both online and in person of sexual healing, growth, exploration, and learning. He works with men, women, and couples of all sexual orientations, as well as private journeys. He offers workshops, retreats, and webinars, and I hope to come to one of them in South Africa at some point. It's on my wish list. He also writes and produces regular content across a range of platforms. And I really encourage you all go and read his beautiful writings that have just, like I said, just really touched me in a deep way. He's really interested in going deep with people that he works with, spending time to really build relationship. And I can attest to that, to the time that you took to get to know me. Our sexuality isn't in a vacuum. It's in the context of our lives, our hearts, our bodies and minds, and our spirit. The journeys we share about are about all of us and all of life. I would agree with that. And he talks about his personal journey of growth and learning is a continuous one, and that he just comes here offering depth of possibility and expansion. So welcome again, Jonti, and please give some love into him in the chat. Let's just start off with talking about even the definition. of sex as problematic. I'm going to kind of just say one thing, and then I want to hear you, because you have so much more wealth of experience and time of experience. But when I say that I support people around pleasure and sexuality, that already people already get a misunderstanding, miscommunication, misperception. And because we have so much shame around it, and people have this definition of sex that it needs a partner and that it's penetration. And then some of them might even say to me, well, I'm not actually having sex anymore, which is kind of, to me, it's like saying, I've decided I'm not going to eat food anymore. I'm not going to, enjoy my life anymore. I'm just going to stop, or I'm just going to have fast food, or like, it's just so that even the definition of sex and using the word sex is often problematic. So can you elaborate more on your experience with your wealth of years of experience and wisdom that you have around working with people?
Well, firstly, you've asked a lot in those few questions, but let's start somewhere. Before that, really, thank you. What you said touches me deeply, and I just so appreciate it. Thank you. For me to share what I do is really important, and for it to touch somebody touches me. So I really thank you for that. That's beautiful. So sex is life, and life is sex. And a while ago, I gave a talk to a group of entrepreneurs, and the topic was the way you run your business is the way you have sex, and the way you have sex is the way you run your business. And
Wow.
essentially, the way that we live is the way that we have sex. So all of life is about sex, because all of life is about making love. And all of life is you breathe in and the air is penetrating you, and you breathe out and you are penetrating and entering life. So all of life is about sex. And when we talk about sort of one body part in another, which is what most people define sex as, it's an incredibly limiting definition of sex. And it's just so much more. And this is the beauty of life, that everything that we're doing is from this interplay of energies, of, we might call them masculine and feminine, in tantric terms, you'd use the words Shiva and Shakti, but so much of it is just simply this interplay of energies that are complementary, that are opposites, that are kind of dancing all the time in so many different ways. And you can have sex with your eyes. I mean, there's a whole field called energy sex, where very often there's no touch, there's no penetration in that, but you can penetrate someone with your eyes, and you can receive somebody into your heart with your eyes. And that's making love on such a deep level. So there are so many ways for us to experience ourselves as sexual beings. And this is important. We are sexual and sensual beings pretty much our life long, whether you're in a relationship or not, whether you're having sex or not, you are a sexual and a sensual being. And part of this life journey is it's a universe, a world of sensuality. So we tend to connect sensuality with sex, and we kind of say that sensuality is the foreplay of sex, and women prefer sensuality more than men. But essentially, sensuality is how we experience each other. So even though that we are kind of so far apart, we can hear each other, we can see each other, and we have a sense of each other, which is kind of an energy connection. And that is sensuality. If I look up, it's almost night here. It's not getting dark outside, and I can see that, and that's me experiencing life in the world, and that's the sensuality. So sensuality is every moment. It's our breath. It's the movement of my hands. It's the supper that I'm going to eat when we are finished. Which reminds me, in just a few, it's the flowers that you have. The feeling of the leaves and the smell of the flowers, whatever it is that might be, that's sensuality. The glass of water that I have, and the sip of water, it's cold and I can feel it in my body. And that's the sensuality of life.
Mm-hmm. I love what you said, and I want to say it again. How we do life and how we show up in work and business is how we show up in sex, and how we show up in sex is how we show up in life and work and business. Yeah, it's you know, sometimes when people have watched me dance and I'm like in this state of ecstasy, I had one woman one time say to me, can I ask you something personal? And I said, of course. And she said, are you drunk and stoned or both? And I said, yes, on life. I said,
Yeah.
life, the music is penetrating me. And I literally have had delicious, orgasmic, sexual life force energy move through me from dance. So yes, and I think because we're so disconnected from this beautiful sacred temple that some people are missing out on that life and breath moving through them, and we're so busy worrying about the past or stressing about the future that people aren't actually here, which is where that connection that we can even have from one continent to another right now.
Yeah. I'm going to answer that in one sec because we started a little bit late. I have to turn the oven off quickly.
Yes, please do. And let us know below in the chat. Give us some love and give us some sense of, does that make sense to you, that how you do life is how you do work, how you do work is how you do life? Put that in the chat. Put sex and work and feel into that. Feel into sex and work, and put that in the chat if you resonate with that. And I think my experience has been that we are so far off of that. We are so disconnected from that on this planet, which is why we have, increase in depression, suicide. And if we have time, I want to actually speak very poignantly about that in a moment. But yeah, that play of, how we do life and is about sex and that penetration of life entering us. We're all sexual beings, like you said. It's not a separate thing. And so, yeah, it comes back to that. We're so disconnected from this temple that breath comes into. We're not even conscious of our breath often.
Yeah, because so much of yeah, carry on.
I was going to just ask, but if you already roll in, one of the questions I was going to ask was more around, I know you've spoken also about the difference between orgasm and pleasure, and let's have a conversation about that too. I'm going to let you carry on.
So much of that is about being in our bodies and being present in our bodies. And the thing about our minds, because we really live in a world of mind, and our world supports our mind so much more than it does our bodies. And what you said, Vireo, so much about the levels of mental health that people are experiencing at the moment, the disconnect from the bodies, where we don't even know how to feel. We don't even know how to actually sense emotion in the body. We get so disconnected from that. And that takes us out of being present, and it takes us into our minds. And so much of what's happening today is we have relationships like this, and we think that this is a relationship. And to some extent, of course, it is. But until I'm sitting opposite you, and until your eyes are right here, and until I feel your hand in mine, then there's a level of intimacy that cannot replace.
Yeah.
I saw a thing a little while ago where there was a therapist talking about, she did a session with somebody and their AI partner, and that's become a form of relationship. And, in a way I get it. And on the other hand, it's like such a scary thing because it's about the connection and the touch, which is absolutely vital, and that's what we need. And as humans, we are wired for connection. It's not that I want it, it's that I absolutely need that for my nervous system, on every level, for my nervous system to regulate. That has to be there. One of the things that got me interested in this whole journey of touch a long time ago was a study done talking about what happens to babies that don't get affection and adults that don't get hugged. And the impact of that is enormous over time. And it impacts on our physical health, on our mental health, on so many aspects of our being. So it's just absolutely vital. And that's where sensuality comes in so much, where we can have the most beautiful touch experiences with each other in so many ways that don't have to be genital, that don't have to be sexual, but that can be deeply intimate and deeply fulfilling. So, pleasure and orgasms is a fabulous topic. I love it. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, and let's do that in a moment because I want to just elaborate to what you said because it's so important. In that study that you talked about, they literally found the children that, the babies that got food and all the other needs met, but didn't receive touch, they actually died. Like the study
Mm,
actually showed that those babies died. And, you know, those of us, I'd love if you speak to this because this is something that I'm exploring myself as a single woman in the Western culture that is so focused on the mind. And when often as a single woman and probably a single man as well, that there's so much shame and judgment and labels, slut, whore, slut shame, with us exploring touch and being intimate beings. And there's not really, how do I say it, a space for sacred touch if you're a single person and you're not in an intimate relationship. And even those in an intimate relationship are often touch deprived because we first there's that disconnect, and then people often misinterpret, with when we're
mm,
asking for, sometimes we're just wanting the touch, just wanting somebody to hold us, but we don't even sometimes know how to ask for it. And I will say for sure, even when I have asked for it, people thought, oh, that's a code word. She didn't really mean snuggle or hug. She actually meant she wants me to penetrate her and have sex with her, right? So there's just like so much, even the communication is not like being met. And so, I would say I'm right now in Mexico. All my friends my community is in another part in Canada right now. And so being in a space where I don't know the language and the people, I have definitely been touch deprived other than my own touch. And
mm.
so that's been an interesting thing. And I'm just curious how, what are you noticing and how do you support people in navigating that? What would you recommend for people? And then we could talk
Yes,
about
it
orgasm.
is a big question because a lot of times we only get touched when we want sex. And that happens in so many relationships, especially long-term relationships that have been happening for quite a while. Um, and understanding that touch and sex are very, very different. And it really is learning to communicate about it and learning to be very, very clear. So, understanding that touch is different and then exploring what touch actually means to us and what it is that we want or that we need in any given moment, which could be something from a hug, from feeling your hands against mine, from just lying together with our bodies touching in different ways. It could be spooning, it could be belly to belly. And belly to belly and belly breathing, by the way, is such a beautiful and such a powerful practice. So it's really simple. All that you do is you sit or lie with your bellies together. So, one of my favorite practices is called Yab Yum. So Yab Yum is essentially such a beautiful way for us to connect. And it doesn't matter what gender you are, it doesn't matter what genitals you have, anybody can do Yab Yum. And you don't need to have your clothes off either. But simply, I would be sitting cross legged and you would sit on my lap with your legs around me and we're holding each other. And that's the simplicity of Yab Yum. But it's such a beautiful position to feel each other. Um, and belly breathing is that simply you're breathing into your belly so that our bellies are touching when we breathe. And it is such a powerful practice of touch. It's so intimate. But learning to ask from our partners what it is that we want with incredible specificity. And that's really important. Because as you say, sometimes we think touch is a code for something. Um, and so many times it's not, but we're not specific enough, and sometimes that's a big problem. So it's learning to be very clear on the kind of touch that you want, and then for your partner to really receive and hear that. And sometimes there's a discussion around that says maybe the touch is going to be reciprocal. Maybe it's going to be a foot massage, for example, and I'm going to massage your feet and you are going to massage my feet. Can we do that? And that level of specific communication is really important. And maybe tonight there's some touch that's for you, and maybe you're really tired to say, well, I'd really love for you to rub my back, and I am tired and I might fall asleep during that. And there's a clarity in that. And then that says, if I don't fall asleep, then I'm happy to rub your back tonight. But if I do fall asleep, then we will make time for that in the next couple of days. And that level of very clear communication is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the next level of that also is for people that are not in partnership. And how do we ask, friends to, I have a few women in my life and a few men that I can do that with, but I don't think everybody has that. So even, I don't know if they were calling it in North America, cuddle puddles, but often people, there was times, not often, sometimes people also misinterpreted that, right? So there's the whole, like you said, clear communication, consent, what are we agreeing to here? But I think that circles like that are also needed for us as human beings, because like you said, we both know, and the research shows that we are meant to experience touch and connection in the flesh with another human being, not just Zoom and AI and these devices, right? So I think technology's been great that we can have this conversation from one continent to another. And like you said, it's now gone to this extreme where people are having a relationship with AI. Like it's just that's bizarre. We could talk about that too, but let's pause that. If people can relate to the touch part, just put the word touch below. And I know, Jonti, you've got a gift for people as well to support them. Let's talk about that first so we don't run out of time for that. And then we can talk about orgasm.
Okay, so the gift that I have for everybody in this group on this platform is a free introductory session with me. So normally I do charge for that, but for everybody here, for the next 10 days, it's a free session. So in that, people will talk about what they might like to be interested in healing or learning about or exploring, and I explain the framework that I work in and teach 1 or 2 practices, and we go from there. And that's my gift to everybody in this platform for the next 10 days. So there is a link, and you just have to kind of you click on the link. It goes to my website, and then I will get an email, and then we make a time for that to happen wherever we are.
Very generous. Can you give an example? There might be some people that watch this after 10 days, and I would like them to at least receive a practice. So what's one practice that maybe somebody who is feeling really disconnected from their bodies and not present or touch deprived, what's maybe one practice they could do to be more present, maybe be more in their body?
Sure. Heart breath. It's where everything starts. So heart breath is very, very simple. You put one or both hands on your heart center in the middle of your chest. And the point of touching is, firstly, you have the touch of your body. But secondly, it brings awareness to your heart center that this is what you're working with. And as you breathe in, you have the awareness that you're breathing into your heart. And as you breathe out, you're breathing out from your heart. So it's a slow, deep breath, not a forced breath, just as deeply as you comfortably can. So let's do this for a minute or so, with your eyes open or closed, whatever you're comfy with. So take a slow, deep breath in and out. And whether you're breathing through your nose or your mouth, it doesn't matter. Don't get hung up on kind of the detail or getting it right for now. Just some slow, deep breaths with the awareness that every time you breathe in, you're breathing into your heart center, and every time you breathe out, you're breathing out from your heart center. And if your mind starts to wander away, just gently come back to the feeling and the sensation of your breath. So I'll be quiet now. We'll do this for a minute or so, and I'll tell you when to stop. Good. So take a deep breath in and a slow breath out. Good. How does that feel? What did you feel during that?
Well, I felt more grounded. I felt expansive. My breath expanded me beyond the physical body.
Beautiful.
Those of you listening to this, I'd love if you drop a word in the chat. How did that feel for you?
Yeah. And you feel a little bit more present in your body?
Yeah, I feel more connected to my body, more like I went into my body, like a sponge. The water goes into the sponge. It's like me went into my body. I do want to say type the word connection if you would like to receive the gift of Jonti's 10 over the next 10 days to have what are you calling your session? Is there a name for it? Do you have a name for it?
No, it's a session.
Okay. So put the word connection if you would like to be gifted this. What would you say some of the benefits that people have received from having a session with you?
I work with people for such a lot of different things. So what's really important, I think, on any journey of healing or growth is that there needs to be a framework. There needs to be an understanding of what it is that we're doing. There needs to be a kind of a clarity. Because so often, especially when it comes to healing, we just kind of start fixing things because we think something's wrong or something needs to be fixed, something needs to be healed, something's broken. And we just kind of start doing things without actually taking a breath and understanding what it is that we're actually doing. So if we have an understanding of that, if we have an understanding of maybe a little bit deeper understanding of what the issues we have actually are, of what it is that we are really looking for, that becomes really big. And that clarity gives us a direction. And that's, I think, in this world, hugely important because there are so many, if you look on Instagram or you look on Facebook, people are offering pretty much everything under the sun and everything is going to fix everything in 6 weeks or 3 sessions. And, all of this bullshit that we buy into sometimes out of sheer desperation. And if we can take a breath and if we can connect with ourselves and get an understanding of a way that we as humans work, and that's what I share, like how do we work? So we talk about the patterns that we live with, a couple of different models of energy of what healing and growth and learning actually are, and how they really happen in the body, how our nervous system works, not just let's fix and let's do. And when we have that, then we can kind of take a breath. And then something has a place within us. And this is really important because our sexuality is in the context of our lives. It's not something that's separate. For a lot of people, sex is in this little box. We take it out in very specific circumstances and contexts. We use it and then we put it away again until the next time. But when we go back to what we were saying in the beginning, that we're sexual and sensual beings all the time, our sexuality is always there, even though we're not conscious of it. And our sexuality comes into every part of our life, and so much of what's happening in other parts of our lives plays out in our sexuality. And when we start to understand that, it's not just this little kind of part of our body, where our genitals are. that the issue is, or if we want to learn more about sex, it has to be about all of who we are, this whole being, our bodies, our minds, our hearts, our spirits, and understanding that becomes so important. And that's what opens so many doors.
Yeah, we are sexual beings and it's mind, body, soul, wholeness, spirit, connecting with that and not this separate thing that we take out and often don't take out very often. You know, the
Yeah.
stats are really sad right now. I don't know what they are in South Africa, but in Canada, I traditionally work with women. Um, 48% of women after 4 years are disinterested and often not having sex anymore with their partner. And I think that's because there is this, it's not really what we've talked about as a definition of sex, of that presence and heart connection and breath and being met and consensual and asking for what we want. It's like because that communication piece is missing, the presence is missing, and it's something they turn on and off. Uh, it, I think that's why people are, they think they don't like sex, but it's they don't like what they're experiencing and they don't even know how to ask for what. I think they don't even know what is available
Yeah,
in the
that's a
first
big
place,
thing.
right?
Yeah, we don't know, and we don't know what we don't know. But this is where the idea of the difference between orgasm and pleasure becomes important. So most people have very goal-oriented sex, which is the goal of the orgasm. So hopefully in a sexual experience, both of us have an orgasm, but then we kind of think, okay, we're done. And because we've reached that goal, it was a successful experience, whatever that means. But pleasure is very different because pleasure doesn't have a goal. It's not about getting somewhere, it's about being. It's not about
Mm,
achieving something, it's not about making something happen. Because as soon as we're in this kind of orgasm loop, very often there's performance and there's pressure. So the contractive orgasm type sex is that essentially the way that it happens is I have to make you come. I have to give you this orgasm. So there's all this pressure on me and there's all this pressure on you because we both have to buy into this model. And it's very much about performance. And it's very much kind of a porn and media based model because that's what they show of sex. Even in kind of Hollywood movies, push you against the wall and there's all this passion from nowhere and sort of some clothes get ripped off, but not too many because you can't show your boobs. So you keep your bra on and you have this amazing orgasm, but nobody asks, what is it that you like? What is it that you want? What makes you have the orgasm? It all just happens spontaneously. And we think that's how it's meant to be, which is just such an illusion. And then it doesn't happen, and we get so disappointed. Um, so the world of pleasure is literally a limitless exploration. And I'll say this because I've
mm,
been exploring and experiencing and teaching and learning about pleasure for pretty much my entire adult life. I still am learning and discovering more. And I'm not saying that from an ego point of view. It simply is that it really is a limitless field of possibility. That is so beautiful. Um,
mm,
And that's what's so amazing. So when we switch from kind of orgasm goal oriented sex into pleasure, that's where so much changes because that's about our whole bodies. It's about our hearts. It's about our minds. It's about our spirits. It's about all of who we are. Um, it's about our shadow because a lot of that stuff is in our shadow. A lot of our sexual power is in our shadow, the parts of us that we haven't integrated, that we haven't allowed and acknowledged. And it's in our spirituality because our that deep sexual experience is a path to the divine, to absolute ecstatic experience. There's a beautiful saying in Tantra that bliss is not a it's not an experience that we have, it's a relationship. So very often we have an experience and we say, oh, this is bliss. But it's based on something that happened and then it ends. So now I'm in the state of bliss. And at some point that kind of, it drops and now I'm back in life and I'm buying groceries and I'm doing all those other things. But when bliss becomes a relationship, that's where a lot changes, because then it starts to be a little bit more infused in the way that we live and in the way that we converse with each other and in the way that we dance with each other. And just by the way, I love what you said about dance, because I have to say this: if you can't dance, you cannot be an amazing lover. That's it, full stop. Even on just a physical level, if it's just physical skills that you want to be an amazing physical lover, if you can't dance, you can't do that. So when we kind of get into the idea of bliss and ecstasy more as a way of being, an enormous amount changes. And that's where we start living with greater pleasure. And it's pleasure in all of life, not just this genital and sexual pleasure.
Yes, yes, that's why we're here in the pleasure revolution, to not be goal oriented, but to have pleasure just be, like you said, a way of being. And it just takes the pressure off when nobody's trying to perform or get to this place of orgasm. And it's way more satisfying. It's like, oh, it's like being filled up from the inside out. And it's beautiful. Just as you were saying about connection with the divine, I literally had coming through me like, right, and it's a pathway to God, to the divine, to that higher self. We could take ourselves there. And when we have that experience with another, can even be more blissful. Um, oh, we could talk for hours. I know that. And I'm so grateful for your generosity in coming and speaking with us here today. If you could relate to anything here, or if it gave you an aha, the best way you could appreciate Jonti is to type it below in the chat, or you could send him a message, because he actually, Colab has a place where you can go and message him privately if you don't feel comfortable. But I'd love if you'd be brave and share it here. You could relate to what he said. And if you would like to have, more pleasure, that's all I talk about is everyday ecstasy, right? Like we can just be penetrated by life and by when we're here in the present moment. I would love if you put some of those words below, if you can relate, put pleasure, the word pleasure below, if you're like, yes, I would like more pleasure, less goal-oriented orgasm. And remember to put the word connection if you would like to receive Jonti's website. I will make sure I put it in the description. We'll also put it below. We'll probably also send it out in an email. I didn't sort of ask you ahead of time, but do you have a piece of your writing that you could share with us, that's what drew me in when I first, discovered you, was your writing, your words that I would read. And I just felt like it was ecstatic. It brought me to moments of like Rumi's poetry that just, Rumi says, you are not one drop in the ocean. You are the entire ocean in one drop. And when I would read your writing, I would feel that same of like, yes, truth, truth. So I don't know if you have a piece. I didn't ask you ahead, but if you have something you could read to us that you're called to give people a sense. And are you still on Facebook? Those who want to follow you, can they find you on social media?
Yeah, on Facebook, on Instagram.
And let us know below in the chat what you have taken away from this conversation with Jonti and I.
There's a piece that I shared last week. It's called the Yoni Massage of Space, Spiral, and Surrender. Earlier this week, we were talking about yoni massage, what it may or may not be. And there's a really interesting model for this, which actually goes much deeper into how we view and how we do sex and pleasure. It's also one of the ways we can understand how differently men and women view pleasure. It's something I've been talking and teaching for a while, and there's awareness of many teachers talking about the same thing. Essentially, it's the difference between a linear approach and experience and something that's more about space, about spirals, about a path that goes up and down and turns back and circles into itself and pauses and sometimes even vanishes for a while and then reappears. which is actually a truer expression of how our sexual energy flows, especially in women. The way most of us have sex is pretty linear. We start here, we follow the steps and patterns we're used to, each one leading to the next. We spend the mandatory, often minimal time at each stage to get to the next, to get to the end, which is the orgasm. We don't really take note of what's happening on the way, what the body is doing, telling us. We're too set in expectation in following the steps we know. It's like a dance we've learned and we simply follow the choreography. When we put this idea in the context of yoni massage, it changes so much. It begins with an intention, presence rather than a goal, the journey, the adventure rather than the destination, the conversation, the listening rather than the doing, the sensation, the feeling, the energy rather than the technique, the experience of what is rather than making something happening, the softening rather than the chasing, the surrender rather than the forcing, the intimacy rather than the performance. The space, the spiral, is about being here with what is. It's a conversation, a dance that has no particular outcome other than what is. There's a relaxation into the feeling, the sensation, the energy, as it moves in the way it will. The surrender is in the body, the yoni leading the way and trying to make something happen. The chasing, even the forcing, we take the voice of yoni away. We can't hear her sing, whisper, even shout into space. The space, the spiral, the surrender is a creation of the moment that comes from listening, feeling, and responding. It's not a technique, it's not getting it right, it's feeling, seeing where a touch, a caress, a movement goes, then responding, and being fluid, soft, present enough to change direction as she moves beneath and around your touch. The linear path is easy, much easier. Learn to do it. The space, the spiral, is more of an awakening. And here we see how much yoni massage is for both of us, rather than me doing something to you. The surrender is me to myself, me to you, you to yourself, you to me, us to each other, to the soft and the slow and the gentle, to the still and the quiet, and to the fire, to the heat, to the raging flames of passion that burn higher and hotter with wanting than many of us can imagine. Learning and doing the technique, the linear stuff, is just the beginning. It's a portal to so much more. And if we get it, it opens the door to a very different experience. And if we really get it, we see how it changes the way we see sex and pleasure, even love. It's where yoni massage is a creation in the moment and creating us again and again in so many ways, taking us into the space of wonder and mystery.
That made me cry. Thank you. If that touched you in some way, put the word yoni below. Now I know some of you might, maybe some of you don't even know the word yoni. Yoni is Sanskrit for our female genitals. It means sacred passage, cave of wonder. Lingam is the word for the male genitals. It means wand of light. Yeah, I just love I could just feel it as you were describing instead of the linear trying to get somewhere, but this spiral of being able to actually listen to the yoni and be an experience for both partners when it's really a tuning in, like, okay, feeling into how that was for the yoni, and more of a spiraling of energy and having I love how you wrote it. I could feel it, like, yes, yes. And I think that's the deepest, what I'm yearning for, and I think what all beings are yearning for, is that deep sensual presence and connection where, poets and like Rumi have written about it, where when we're really with each other, I dissolve into you and you dissolve into me, and there's this as you're giving, you're receiving, and as you're receiving, you're giving. There's this, we're not trying to get anywhere. We're just like right here drinking up the nectar
Yeah, yeah,
of life.
the absolute union.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And if you would like more of Jonti's beautiful writings and his teachings and to follow him and be inspired, they're beautiful to read with your lover, with yourself. I have been, you write for both men, women, couples, regardless of their sexual orientation. He has videos as well, amazing work. I'm setting on my list that I will be able to come and take one of your workshops in South Africa in the near future. Would be super amazing. Thank you so much for your generosity here today. Again, put the word connection if you would like to receive Jonti's gift that he has given to have a session with him, which, yeah, that's going to be transformative. And if you want to follow him on social media, and we will put that below as well. Any final words you want to leave people with as we end our session here today?
Yeah, I think this journey is absolutely vital for life. So often our sexuality, especially in times of stress, times of crisis, kind of falls down the list, and we forget the power of our sensuality, the power of pleasure, because it is a connection to the deepest parts of who we are. And it's so important to remember and acknowledge that you're a sexual and sensual being in your own right. And to express that in the world, and that your sexual energy is life force, it's vitality, it's creativity. It's so much more than just sex, and our bodies, our pleasure, are a portal to the deepest, most beautiful parts of who we are. And I thank you for this opportunity to share, and I wish you all so much pleasure. And yeah, I'd love to share more with you. So thank you so much, Vireo. I really appreciate this time.
Beautiful ending. Pleasure is a portal to ourselves and to the divine. If this moved you in some way, I think everybody's hungry for this, what Jonti was speaking out in our conversation here. Go to the three dots above this interview, click on it and take the link and go and share it with somebody that you deeply care about, because I promise you, it may be their moment of awakening to be more present and embrace pleasure as a portal to the divine and to their deepest selves. So thank you again, Jonti, for being here. I so appreciate you, and many blessings.
Thank you so much from my heart to you.
Thank you.